Okay, now that we all have the right paper, it says comparing slope, horizontal and vertical slope. Now, you can write Hoy and Vu. Those are how I'm going to be referring to these. The acronyms help you know what goes where and why it goes there. So, recalling information, we're going to find the slopes of these graphs. We've already done this before, but now we're going to do it again in a different way. But looking at this one, look at slope for A. How would you describe that slope in one word? For graph A, how would you describe that slope in one word? It's either this or this. One of two words. Yeah, how would you describe the slope of this line? It is positive. Because where is it going from left to right? Up. Do you see that arrow there? That's what I'm focusing on. That means my slope should also be positive. So I need to find what kind of point. It starts with an L. Remember, we wrote this vocabulary word in on our notes. I need to find a, it's on 4.4. See if you can find it.
Oh yeah, I'm not at home.
You just said that out loud on a recording. Let that sink in.
That ain't good. But people actually want you?
Yes.
It be random people too. Well, they'll know who I am though. I think they
Guys, looking, focus. It's already 8:23. We're trying to get this going. Ain't no money to be made. Focus on passing. I said ain't no money to be made. Focus on passing. I didn't stutter. Find that vocabulary word for me, okay? It was on 4.4. L. Left to right is the direction in which we read it. What did you say? Lattice point. Lattice point. What direction do we need to start at? The leftmost point. Can we use the y-intercept in this case? Yes, because is it a lattice point? Yes, because it falls on a crosshair. What coordinate pair is that?
0, -3.
0, -3. And then, can I find another lattice point that falls on a crosshair to the left of it?
Yes.
What coordinate do you see?
-3 and -1.
3, -1. So starting from my leftmost point, right here, where do I need to go?
Up 3.
Up how far?
3.
Are you sure?
2.
2. So that makes it a positive or -2? Positive, because you went up. And then where do I need to go?
Over.
In which direction?
3.
To the right, how far? 3. So that makes it a what kind of 3? A positive 3. I write this as rise over run. So how would I write my slope here? 2 over 3. Do I need to type that in?
No.
Yes. Always. Type it in. But the thing is, we can get decimals. Hit math 1 enter. And ask yourself, did you get the same thing back or not?
Yes.
If you did, that means it's fully simplified. Never assume. Always type it in. Any questions? Ask your question, child.
I thought we were supposed to go all the way up there and turn left.
Baby, what do you mean?
You know how you did it too?
You go from lattice point to lattice point. That's what you're supposed to do. Which means it's up and then to that point. You don't go past it because you're trying to reach this point. That's how you find the slope. The distance should not change, because even if I started at this point that is a lattice point, if I went up 2 and to the right 3, did I just hit my y-intercept?
Yeah.
Yeah, that means the slope is correct. You have to go to lattice points, or else you won't get a consistent answer. Any questions? Bless you, sir.
Thank you.
How would you describe the slope for B? In one word. Negative. Because what is it doing from left to right? Going down. My rightmost arrow is pointing downward. So I know it's negative. So I know automatically I need to have a negative up here. So, where's my first lattice point that you want to use?
-4 and 1.
I mean, yes and no. We should always try to use what? Not the leftmost, but try to see if our, what was this point called? The, What's special about this point? It's a,
It's on the y-axis.
which makes it a.
Oh, 0.
It hits the y-axis, so it makes it a y-intercept. Thank you,
I'm
Kylan.
saying that for the other.
So, do I have a y-intercept for this one that is a lattice point?
0, 0.
At 0, 0. Do I have a lattice point to the left of that?
Yes.
Yes. Where?
1 and 2.
Not quite.
4.
When you say 1, -4, that's over here. I said to the left. Not to the left, to the right. Sorry.
Oh.
It's supposed to be to the right. That was my bad.
4 and 1.
4, -1. So, looking at this point right here, where do I need to go?
Down 1.
Down 1. So, what kind of 1 is that? And then,
Over 4.
what direction?
Right.
Right. So that makes it a what kind of 4? I write this as rise over run, so how would I write this fraction?
-1 over 4.
-1 over 4.
Should I type that in?
No. Well, yes.
Yes, always. Because you never want to assume. Assuming typically makes us fail and mess up. We don't want to do that too often. Did you get the same thing back? So my slope should be. Any questions there? Now, equations for horizontal and vertical lines. These are special because when we're looking at horizontal lines, they go left to right always. There is no incline or decline from left to right. It's always one consecutive or consistent y value. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So no matter what x is, what will this y always be? The same at what value?
0, 2.
What kind of 2?
Negative.
-2, because is it below 0?
Yes.
Yes. So no matter what it is, it will always be -2. Everybody still with me? So this is a horizontal line. Is it a function?
No. Well, yes.
Yes, because it passes the vertical line test. It says use the slope formula to find the slope. All I need is 2 points, x1, x2, y1, y2. So it always starts with
Y2 minus
m equals, and then,
Y2 minus Y.
so how would the top be set up?
-2 minus parentheses -2.
Absolutely. How do I say the line? It's,
Combine
it's, how do I say the fraction bar? Over, so say over.
Over.
So it's -2 minus -2. Say the word. Over. Let's try that again. -2 minus -2. Thank you. That's what you need to start saying, okay? From there, what goes at the bottom?
-1 minus
Minus what?
-3.
Thank you. Do I see a double negative? So what does this become? -2 plus 2. -2 plus 2 equals what? Great. Over. Do I see a double negative? So that becomes a 3 minus 1. 3 minus 1 is Baby, all I did was flip it around, so it makes more sense to say for mental math. But -1 plus 3 is still 2. Any questions there? Do I need to type that fraction in? Yes, always. 0 minus 2, well, 0 over 2 gets me. So my slope is, so that goes there. Do I have a y-intercept on the table? Yes, where? At -2. It's right there. Hey, Davis. So 0, -2. So how would I write my equation? In slope-intercept form. No, slope-intercept form. Y. Not quite.
-2.
Nope. 0. What comes after M? X. Thank you. And then minus 2. But does this make any sense to keep? So the actual answer is y equals, nope, -2. What's anything times 0? What's 0 minus 2? -2. You see how that just got to stay? That's algebra. I know, it's so rough out here. It's still that. Any questions? Any questions here? It says on the same coordinate plane, graph y equals 4 and y equals -1. So, how would I graph y equals 4? From the origin, where do I need to go? Up, how far? 4. And create what? A. Are you reading?
No.
Then read. What am I creating? A. What was that, Denver? The slope is, we can't know that yet, right? Isn't it written the same way we just wrote that one? What kind of line is that? I have my word highlighted. Did you underline or highlight your word? It says y equals 4. That says y equals -2. So they must be the same type of line. What kind of line is that? Horizontal. Where do I have it highlighted? I'm teaching you how to do what? So what kind of line needs to happen here? A horizontal line. It pays to read, sweet angels. This is why we do it. But we're not just graphing that line, are we? They said graph also what? Altogether, what's the equation? Altogether, what's the equation? Guys, I'm just reading. You see where my pen is pointing? Thank you. Don't just say I'm doing -1. Write what you're actually putting. That way your brain is registering what's happening. That's how an okay student becomes a great student. That's how a great student becomes an amazing student. You know how I know that? I was that student. Okay? I'm still that student in graduate level courses. So which means if I can do it, can't you? Read, sweet angels, read. That's all we're asking you to do. Okay? So what am I having to graph next? Just reading. So from the origin, where do I need to go? Down 1. And? What kind? Thank you. And make sure you label it to know which line is which. And note, I didn't need a highlighter for that. All I did was write out the equation right next to it. Any questions there? What's the slope of all horizontal lines? No, what's the slope of all horizontal lines? If we just said all of these match this, what's the slope of all horizontal lines? Mm-mm. What's the slope of this line? Nuh-uh. What's the slope of this line? 0. So what's the slope of all horizontal lines? 0. Thank you. So we know we need to study, yes? Good, good. Use the graph below to complete this table. This graph is vertical because it's going up and down. So if I'm looking at this, that means all of my x values should be what? -2. Because am I using any other x values left to right? No. So this entire table should be -2 on the x side. So that means I can choose any values of y and it would still be true in this case. -2, 2. That works. -2, 0. That works. -2, 6. That works. You want to give me a number? 8. That works. And how about a negative number? -2. All of those still hit this line because y can change because you're going up and down forever, but x is not going to be different. It's going to be the same the entire time. Any questions there? So this is a vertical line, meaning x will always be the same. Is it a function? No. Absolutely not. Remember I told you be dramatic on ones like this? Because you can't pass a vertical line test if you are a vertical line, right? So we go absolutely not. Somebody asks you when you move on to your next class for Algebra 1 next semester or next year, you go absolutely not. That ain't no function. And they gonna know exactly who you got it from. Okay? So use the slope formula to find the slope. How many points do I need? Points. Just 2. That's 4 values for 2 points. So x1, x2, and then y1 and y2. So how would I set this up? 0 minus 2. Thank you. Perfect. Typing in 0 minus 2 first. Going to get that typed in. What'd y'all get? Everybody get -2? Bless you. What do you notice at the bottom? No problem. It makes a plus sign because there's double negatives there. So we're multiplying to make it a positive. So -2 plus 2. Type that into your calculator. And what does it say? It says error. Do you see what it says next to error? What does it say? Divide by 0. So we need to make a note. You can't divide by 0. Meaning you can't split anything into nothing. So it can exist. That's the whole point of making a fraction, right? We usually use fractions to be able to share things equally with people. How can you share anything by 0? You can't. So that's what makes this, what one word, we use the word undefined. That's the slope. It is undefined. Any vertical line will have an undefined slope. Any questions there? And that's because of this. What's your y-intercept? Look at your graph.
0. It wouldn't be anything.
It wouldn't be anything. Because did it cross it at all? It didn't hit the y-axis at all. So there is not one. So we'd put none.
Is there always not one?
It just depends. Because if it hits the y-axis, there is a y-intercept at 0. But this does not touch the y-axis at all. So you have to know where your lines are. Any questions there? So the equation for this, it would not start with y. It would start with x. And x equals what? Not quite. Y, x equals It'll always be this and it'll never change. I have it highlighted. -2. Because there is no y to factor into this. Because there's not a y-intercept, but there sure is an x-intercept. Where's the x-intercept at? -2, 0. And that's where that comes from. So on the same coordinate plane, we're going to graph x equals 2. So from the origin, where do I need to go?
Over.
In which direction?
Over to the left. Well, no, to the right one.
To the right, because isn't that a positive?
Yes.
How far?
2.
2. And what line am I creating?
Up or down?
Which is called a vertical line. We got to know this vocabulary. That's what keeps beating us up. I tell you with love, we have to know this vocabulary, okay? And what other line am I graphing?
-4.
Line, that means the whole equation. Baby. X equals -4. I'm having you read it all the way out. That way you are holding yourself accountable for knowing what I'm asking you to do. Because what happens when we get on tests and quizzes? Do y'all read all the directions before you do it?
Yes.
Nope. Because then I get asked questions, and then Ms. Davis gets asked questions, and Ms. Davis asks me questions, and she says, Ms. Lipsey, where did this come from? And I go, did they read the directions I wrote? And then we have a come to Jesus meeting about the fact that, was all the directions there? No. Did that child read? No. And do you think this is their first time doing this? No. So please read it all the way. Don't take shortcuts. From the origin, where am I going?
Over 4. To the left.
To the left. And making what? A what? A vertical line. What's the slope of all vertical lines? Undefined. Because you can't divide by what? 0. Any questions there? Any at all? So, here's this acronym I was telling you about. Everybody good before I flip? So if I'm looking at this one, H stands for, what do you think? Horizontal. Look at you. The O stands for 0 slope. So that's supposed to be 0, but it has to do with the slope. And then Y, intercept. Meaning this is going to equal to a number and no X. Meaning Y equals a number, no X value. What about the V in VU? Vertical. Look at y'all. U4. What kind of slope does it have? Undefined. Undefined slope. And then X, intercept. Bunch of smart cookies y'all are.
I like this.
Too bad I don't have any. Focus up here. No, why? It'll just be X equals a number. If y'all led with y'all's brains as bad as y'all led with y'all's stomachs, y'all would be in such a great place academically. We good. Any questions there? So we did transformations, right? We talked about those. How many transformations are happening in A? 2. What's my slope? Slope? 5 over 9. What's my y-intercept? What's the first transformation that's happening? Do I need to probably check that fraction to see what decimal it is? And what number am I comparing it to? To 1. If you were looking up here at me, I held up the number 1. So we need to be typing in what? Do that, please, and thank you. What decimal did you get? What was it? Sorry, a little bit louder. 0.5 repeating. How does that compare to 1?
It's lower than 1.
So it's less than? So what kind of transformation is that? Not steeper if it's less than, flatter. So how would I write that?
5 over 9, flatter.
5 over 9. What word? What is this doing to x? What operation? Multiplication. So what word goes there? Times. And what's the other transformation that happened? So what needs to go before that? VS for vertical shift. Up 10. Perfect. Any questions there? How many transformations are happening with B?
1.
Are you sure?
No, it's 2.
Are you sure? Huh? It's 3. What's the slope?
-5.
-5. And then what's my B? So what's the first transformation looking from left to right? You had me in the first half. Negative. What does the negative do? VR. That's a vertical reflection. And then, what comes after that? Covering up the negative. Nuh-uh. 5, what? Times steeper. Because how does 5 compare to 1? It's greater than, which means it'd make it steeper. And then what's my last one? Guys, all of these will be on that quiz. Be mindful. Any questions there? So, does the negative slope affect the steepness or flatness of the graph? Yes or no? No. Because didn't I hide the negative and compare a positive 5 because I took the absolute value? So does it have anything to do with it? No. That's a big thing to know. Any questions there? Look at example number 3. So slope and steepness of a line. Which line from the graph is the steepest? So you're comparing A, which is the purple line here on my paper, B, the red line, C, the green line, D, the blue line, and E, which is the black line. Which one has the steepest slope? Remember, positive and negative does not matter. It means which one is the most what? The closest to? The closest to?
The Y.
Which is the closest to? What word? Vertical. So look to see which one is the closest to being vertical. A. It does not matter if it's negative. It's A. Which is the least steep? C. Because it ain't going nowhere. It is as horizontal as it can get. Use slope triangles to find the slope of each line. So let's focus on A first. Can we start at the y-intercept for A? Where's the y-intercept? 2, right there, right? That's my first lattice point I can use. It also gave me a lattice point for B. So, is A slope positive or negative? For A, we read graphs in what direction? So if I put mine on the leftmost arrow, what's happening when I move to the right? So what kind of slope is that? So do I have a lattice point to the left of this point? Well, not to the left, to the right. I keep saying left. Yes, where's my next lattice point? Focus only on A. Tune the other ones out. How about right here? 1, -3. Do you see where I found it? It has to be a perfect lattice point. So from this point, where do I need to go? Down. How far? Count with me. Count with me. Look up here. From here. Don't rush it. We starting over. So where are we going? Down. That's how much?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So I went down how far?
5.
And then where do I need to go?
Over 1.
To which direction?
Right.
Thank you. So I would write that as -5 over 1, correct? How would that simplify? -5 over 1. That's my slope for A. Everybody still with me? Looking at B. That's the red one. From this one, do I see a lattice point to the right? At what coordinate? 2, 0. That's right there. How was that a lattice point for B? 0, 2. That we're already on that point. What was it? I need a little bit more than that. What's your Y? They're like, she gave me an X value. Where's your Y? So 6, 6 would work. That is a lattice point. That's perfect. You need an X and a Y. Huh? So from here, where do I need to go? Up. How far do I have to go up? I'll count with you. So from there. So that's up 4. And then, where do I need to go? To the right. Let's count together, okay? So I have 4 over 6. Putting that in your calculator. Four over 6. It gets what? 2 over 3. You can't say something just don't work. That means you just don't know what you're doing. I know. We know. That's why we were quiet. Looking at this, what's the slope for C? No. What kind of line is C? Horizontal, and their slope will always be. Thank you. Don't you have the acronym above the paper? Right at the top? Don't it say 0 slope? Come on now. D. How would you describe that slope in one word? We read graphs how? Put your pen on the leftmost arrow for D. It's going where? So it's what kind of slope? Negative. Whoever that person who said positive, I'm going to need you to start doing that. From there, where's my lattice point that I should start on? Not quite. 0, 0. Try to start with your y-intercept. It makes the most sense. That way you don't confuse yourself. Look for a point to the right of that point. Do I see a lattice point? 4, -1. From there, where do I need to go? Not quite. Down, because it's negative. How far do I need to go down? 1. And then? Where? Thank you. I need directions. So how would I write that slope? Typing that in, see if it changes. -1 over 4. Did it change? So what am I putting for D? Perfect. And finally, E. Where should I start? At -1. It should be 0, -1, right? Because that's my y-intercept. Lattice point to the right. Is that one a perfect lattice point? It'd be 5, -7. It looks like a perfect one, but you see it's slightly above where those two crosshairs meet. So can't be that one. It should be that one. Where do I need to go? Down how far? Not quite. So from -1, count with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What? So how far did I go down? Don't assume. I didn't start at 0. I started at -1. And where do I go from there? How far? 5. That one can be that because I started at 0. So how do I write the slope here? Thank you. Can that simplify? Typing it in and checking it. No, it gives you the same thing back. Any questions? Find the absolute value or positive form of each slope, then write in order from least steep to steepest. So, least steep to steepest. What is the absolute value of -5? 5. I don't have to do that one. Don't have to do that one. What's the absolute value of -1 over 4? 1 over 4. And then, what's the absolute value of -6 over 5? Perfect. So, which one is the flattest one? A, B, C, D, or E? C. Because what's its slope? Didn't you just say this was the least steep? So, what am I trying to teach you how to do? What a concept. What will come next? What's the next smallest? What was it? You said D or B, baby? D, because isn't this as a decimal written as 0.67? And isn't this one 0.25? Which one's smaller, 2 or 6? 2, so D would have to go next. Then B, then which graph is the steepest? So should that be touched? And should be last. So what's next? I'm teaching you how to do what? Ooh, I love y'all. Y'all gotta learn how to read, okay? Expeditiously. Read it. Compare the steepest line to the least steep. So, comparing the steepest line to the least steep, it means that when we have a greater slope, it's going to be steeper. Does that make sense? The smaller the slope by absolute value, not by negative sign, by absolute value, it's going to be closer to horizontal. So, I'm going to write this in as summarized as I can, okay? So, for the steepest line, greatest slope. For the least steep line, the flattest line, least slope. That's how I would summarize it. The greater the slope, by absolute value, the steeper the line. The smaller the slope, through absolute value, the flatter the line. And if you hit 0, baby, that is as steep as that's at least steep as it can go. It is horizontal, period. Which is increasing or decreasing at the fastest rate, based on what I just told you. So which graph, you have to look at the steepest or the least steep. So it's either between which two letters, A or C. Which one of those two are increasing or decreasing at the fastest rate? A. The reason why, a great analogy is think of a car. So think of them as driving a car. While going uphill or downhill. If you look at A, you dropping off the face of the earth. Do you see that? That is a steep hill. You fall down that, you drive down that, you better have good brakes. Because if not, you about to be flying through that stop sign. Okay? But if you are at C, baby, you ain't even moving. You got to put gas on that. Does that make sense? Everybody with me? Anybody lost? Okay. So, your little practice problem is going to be really quick, okay? I just want you to answer these two questions for me. Answer A and B on practice number 1. Answer A and B on practice number 1. Yep, I have them circled on my paper so you see exactly which ones I'm talking about. Answer A and B on practice number 1. Thank you, sir.